All night long. Yeah.
It's the All Night Long Wrestling Podcast with the Enforcer.
I believe they're called enforcers, Gordon. I sell women's shoes.
And the Stallion.
Stallion, baby! I am not what you would call a handsome man.
I'll kick you in the nuts and you'll smile at me and like it.
Oh, nice.
Welcome to another edition of the All Night Long Wrestling Podcast. We are your host. He is the Stallion. I am the Enforcer, and we are joined by a very, very special guest, albeit technical difficulties stood in the way. We powered through them. We would like to welcome Veda Scott to the All Night Long Wrestling Podcast. Veda, thank you so much for joining us.
Hello.
Well, I know it was a little bit tough getting you on, but like I said, we kept the positive energy, and we're gonna go right through that. So you've had quite a busy, I would say, last couple of weeks, and I know anybody who's following you on Instagram, social media, Twitter at It's Veda Time can see that you are one of the busiest people in the business. I can safely say that, but I would like to really kind of start from the beginning real quick. I know you were trained by Delirious and Daisy Hayes in the Ring of Honor dojo, and Ring of Honor back in that time wasn't necessarily known for women's division or women's matches. So what made you want to start, at the ROH dojo? Were you a fan of Ring of Honor previous to that?
Yeah, I was. I mean, I'm from the. Oh, is there feedback or something? I can't hear myself. Is it okay?
Oh no, I think we're good over here.
Okay. No, it's weird because I feel like I use every communication app that there is, and I've never used this particular one. I've never used this for calls or anything, so that's why it didn't work. Anyway, I am from the Philadelphia area, or I'm not from the Philadelphia area, but I've been living in the Philadelphia area, and was a huge wrestling fan. So of course I was an ROH fan, just a fan just in general of pro wrestling and indie wrestling, especially in that area. And I was also going to school in the area of the school, of the wrestling school, which because of my education, it was kind of limiting my choices for wrestling school. But that was, and I say it was limiting my choices, but the limitation was within this area where there were a number of really, really good wrestling schools. So I kind of had to choose. I had to choose within this limited geographic area because I was in school. But ROH is what was the best fit for me, I felt, at the time. And you're right, they didn't have women's wrestling really happening there at the time. It was sort of in between their eras of women's wrestling. But that was fine because I didn't start training there with the intention of ever working there. I just did a wrestling school.
Oh, interesting. So you just started, in the dojo because it was a great place to train and that's where it was. But, your big picture wasn't necessarily working for Ring of Honor?
Right, because it didn't feel like an option. They didn't have women really on their roster, like we had said, that they didn't have women's wrestling really wasn't happening there at that time. It's not that it hadn't, and it's not that it wouldn't. It just that's not where they were in their just what they were doing. So it didn't seem like a viable. It wasn't. I didn't start there because I saw it as developmental or anything like that, because it didn't come across like that ever. I wanted to get trained, and I wanted a wrestling school, and obviously the networking there was incredible. I got to travel all over the country doing ring crew, met tons of people, and that's how I got my start. But yeah, ending up working there was really fortunate and unexpected.
Was it scary training with Delirious? That just the idea of that terrifies me.
I mean, I was trained by Daisy Hayes. Was really the person who did so much with me, and she was just a hero of mine in terms of wrestling too. So it was surreal to be in the ring with her, however many days a week. And then Delirious, of course, as long as you can understand what he's saying.
Yeah, which
has a good record as a trainer as well.
Which can be difficult. And you said you were going to school as well. If people follow you, they know, but not many people might know this. You went to law school, and you completed law school as you completed professional wrestling school. How How do you manage to do both?
So I was already in school when I started training, and a lot of people do that. A lot of people are balancing education and wrestling training, and then eventually working in wrestling. And I think it's a matter for all of us of just time management and deciding like what your goals are. And if you have a goal to finish school, like for example, Britt Baker, who is a phenomenal women's wrestler out of Pittsburgh, she just finished dental school like last week. Like she just finished. She's a freaking dentist. She's a doctor. And she did all of this, like a good portion of her dental school and all of like her training and everything happened while she was working as a professional wrestler, and she wrestles all over the place. There's a lot of people who are trying to have that balance happen. And I'm not just talking about like graduate school or professional level school, but even just undergraduate is tough. When you're trying to be a wrestler, like you miss out on campus life, you miss out on so much of the university experience. And I think it's a sacrifice that a lot of people or a lot of fans maybe don't realize that some of the performers they're seeing are making. For me, law school is very difficult. It's very regimented. So part of it was just time management and not sleeping for 3 years of my life.
Well, I would say you can catch up on it now, but with your worldwide traveling, I don't think that's necessarily possible either. Having completed both, if you had to go back and do only one of them, what would it be?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I don't practice law right now. So like on the one hand, you might say like, oh, that's, that was a lot of education and debt to not be a lawyer at this moment in time. But it was such a positive experience for me. I know it's something that will prove useful in the future. I made some of my best friends there. Like it was an experience that I would never, ever, ever want to get rid of. But at the same time, of course, like I can't imagine not being a professional wrestler. Like this is all I've ever wanted to do, truly. And it's all I feel ever have felt like that fit me. Like this is the only place I've ever really fit.
I know you said growing up you were a professional wrestling fan, and I believe you were a pretty big ECW fan, correct?
I was a fan of all wrestling. I've been a fan of all wrestling for my entire life. So anything that came along, I would just watch it obsessively.
Well, that's awesome. That's going to lead me into my next question. Every single person that we talk to on the All Night Long Wrestling podcast, we ask this question. Me and Joe are split down the middle. Shawn Michaels or Bret Hart?
I mean, I guess it depends on the factors that you're going into. I think I get more long-term watchability out of Shawn Michaels, I think. But Bret Hart, I think too. So my favorite wrestler of all time, I will say, is Owen Hart. Has been since I was a kid, which like difficult to find merchandise sometimes. It was like not the most popular choice, but so for me, I don't know, maybe there's like a bias in there because I always rooted for Owen, so I don't know, that could be an ingrained bias.
That's a tough one. I think we've probably talked to maybe 20, 25 people on the show, and only one person has been on Team Bret Hart with me, and that was Solo Darling, who we spoke to last week. So, Joe, that's another win for you.
It's a win.
But it's like it's not like I'm saying one is good and one is bad. Let's clarify that.
Right. Of course. I mean, these a lot of these guys are like 1A and 1B in a lot of people's top 10 of all time. So. It's just I'm going to catch up to you one day. Team Bret Hart will prevail. What was it? I believe you said Steve Corino was one of your favorite wrestlers out of ECW. Is that true?
Another favorite. I really like the entertainment aspect of professional wrestling, and he was very entertaining. I loved the incorporation of the old school and new school, and I loved that he could talk. So pretty much a lot of so again, this maybe the Owen Hart thing seems a little bit weird to come off this, but like people who are really, really good at drawing fans in on the microphone have always been appealing to me. I've realized as I've gotten older and thought about like what I enjoyed even as a fan, even before I knew nothing about wrestling other than like what I enjoyed, just people who are big characters or could talk was always important to me.
Let me ask you right now, the current product. I know you said, you kind of watch everything. Who do you think right now is the best talker?
Oh God. Man, Alexa Bliss is so good. She's very, I think, very compelling. It has a lot of time to talk to. I don't know. I think in terms of independent wrestling, I've been seeing a lot more recently. Like, it seemed to go away for a little while, but more recently, where people are just kind of putting out promos for their matches, which I think is neat. I think that's a neat way to like practice speaking and practice.
Yeah, it's kind of a throwback to the old school where, growing up, you would watch matches and they would have like each guy talk for maybe, 90 seconds in the back beforehand to kind of pump you up for the match. But now with YouTube, I think it's an awesome way for, people to get themselves out there, cut a promo, and then just post it to YouTube, and it be seen by 500,000 people in seconds. So I think that's awesome. I think you make a great point about that.
Yeah, and there's also this new breed of like super produced promos that are amazing too. There's a number of video editors out there that are working with professional wrestlers as well to put together these packages. But sometimes they're self-produced promos too. Like, Leva Bates always has really, really interesting character-based promos. Solo Darling, who you said you just had on, I guess it was last week, she usually has really, really compelling video packages that she makes herself. Like, I think that's cool too. That's an expansion of not even just like 90 seconds on YouTube, but people are taking it upon themselves to flesh out their characters through these little video packages. And that's kind of a throwback as well, because, back in the day, you would get video packages for people and it wouldn't be necessarily a promo. It would be them, out in quote unquote real life, but it'd be real life, like them, their job as a construction worker or whatever. And I think that's really cool too.
Or like the Big Boss Man had like weeks and weeks and weeks of him being a corrections officer. You're right. That's awesome. It's really it's a new wrinkle to the character, and I think it's a good time for it. Do you watch NXT and WWE as well?
I watch everything. I watch all the wrestling that I can watch.
That is awesome.
I think it's important.
Let me ask you, I know Shayna Baszler, NXT champion, Ronda Rousey in WWE. What's your take on, their characters, and do you think they're being, I know Shayna spent a lot of time on the independents, and she wrestled for AIW and things like that. But do you think they're kind of being, I don't want to say rushed, but maybe thrown into a spot where creatively they're not ready for?
I mean, with something like that though, like Shayna's so cool. Shayna's like so cool, and when you're around her, she is everything that she seems to be on screen. Like, it's, to me, with something like that or something like Ronda, like they have this air of legitimacy about them, and anything else just doesn't seem credible. Like, she's a badass, and that's real, and there's no way to hide that or slow that down. And I think now kind of what's happening in NXT, I like the development of things from what I'm watching, and the spoilers. Like I said, I watch everything, because how can you not? Like, there's a lot of people who are professional wrestlers who don't seem to be wrestling fans, and I don't understand that. Like, you could say even that like something that you see on TV doesn't engage you or you don't enjoy it, but to not pay attention to it or watch it or in any way like engage with what is going on around you, like, I don't know, I don't get that.
So back to your career just real quick. I mean, I just doing some research on you before the show. Pro Wrestling Illustrated is a magazine. Obviously, it has PWI 500, PWI Top 50 for females every year, which you've been consistently in for a while now. But in 2012, they named you their Rookie of the Year. And
Yes.
Just looking at the list of people on here that were Rookie of the Year, Steve Austin, Kurt Angle, Randy Orton, and Owen Hart back in 1987. So what did that mean for you, just getting started out in the business, to be recognized in that way, and then kind of be in the same list of people like that had been named Rookie of the Year?
Well, for me, the coolest part about it was that I could give it to my mom and she could look at it. Like, that was like a tangible thing of like, hey, I'm doing this wrestling. Here's the thing. I'm in a magazine. So that was really cool. It was motivating, but it was also a lot of pressure because you have to in some way make an attempt to follow up on that. Anyway, there wasn't a lot of women that had been named that, and the pressure is totally off me now because they eventually named Charlotte Rookie of the Year, and she's done incredible things. So I feel like I could just slide back.
Well, I mean, you
like,
kind
if
of
the benchmark is Charlotte, then I'm cool with being like somewhere in the background.
But that also means you're in great company, and I think you've expanded your horizons from there. I mean, you wrestled Shimmer, you know, AIW, Women of Honor, Ring of Honor, and then you kind of, you know, you went abroad and did a lot, spent a lot of time wrestling over in Japan. How did you make the transition from, you know, American style wrestling to the Japanese style? What was different about the culture over there of, you know, pro wrestling, and how were you really accepted?
Oh, I mean, everywhere I go, wrestling is honestly, it's just wrestling. Like there's different things to kind of to look at in terms of what a particular promotion might like, or what a particular fan base likes, or your particular opponent. But I think you get to a certain level where everyone has similar goals of just entertainment, and that's really reassuring to see. I also try to position myself so that I'm able to work for places that really focus on that as well. So I think that's probably been helpful. But yeah, my goal when I started wrestling was that I didn't really have a goal. I just wanted to wrestle. And now I've kind of matured that a little bit, and my goal is just to travel as much as possible, which is what I'm doing. So I've made, you know, decisions in my career that took me maybe away from more mainstreamy things, but I wanted to travel, and that's what I'm getting to do now. So I'm pretty happy with that.
And I don't know if one of those decisions is this, but you are, you know, at the forefront of the, I don't want to say the intergender, you know, wrestling revolution, but you spend a good amount of your time on intergender matches. I mean, cage matches, some seriously brutal stuff. When do you think the kind of the ideology changed on that, and that became more acceptable? And was that something that you were excited to do from the beginning?
I mean, again, same thing. Like wrestling is just wrestling. It's all just a way of figuring out how to entertain and tell this athletic story that we're trying to tell. So there's different challenges with every single match, and sometimes intergender adds a new wrinkle to the challenge. A lot of times it's a size challenge, or if you're going to play into the gender story. But for me, that's what it's always been. It's just like a different, maybe just a different challenge that you have to undertake in order to have a particular match. And I think that it's become more and more widespread just over time, just people having it in front of them. And of course, there's always going to be people who aren't into it and aren't interested in it. And I've never once, like, you know, tried to convince them otherwise, because to me, that's not the audience. And, you know, if your thought is that this is somehow like some sort of like violent display that you can't get behind, then you probably have other issues that I'm also not going to be able to crack. And for me, like, you know, I wish you would appreciate my work. I wish you would watch this, but I can't spend my time worrying and arguing with people who their opinion is not going to be changed, because their opinion is not one that I agree with in probably many aspects of their life. So I just really try to focus on, you know, presenting the best entertainment to the people who want to see it, and, you know, not paying a whole lot of attention to people who don't.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to alienate like the wrestling fans, but there are a lot of wrestling fans who kind of have, maybe they're very cliquey when they're saying, you know, I only watch this promotion and X, Y, and Z isn't good, or something like that. And some wrestling fans, definitely not all, but some wrestling fans have a very closed mind into what, you know, what they like, and anything they don't like is kind of, they're not interested in, or it's trash or something like that. And I think now at this time, especially, you have the WWE Network, but then you also have the Ring of Honor streaming service. You have the Progress streaming service. You have Shakar and all that stuff. I think it's a great time to be a wrestling fan of somebody who's not just a fan of the WWE, because as you said, there's always something else out there that you can, you know, that you can watch or that you can learn from and stuff like that. I think it's so important right now to have an open mind, because I think the business really is changing.
Yeah, I mean, it's rare that I wrestle on a show now these days that either isn't streamed live or pretty much immediately, except like everything obviously is still out on DVD or like available through a streaming service, but it's rare that I'm on a show anymore that isn't, and I'm talking about like shows of all sizes everywhere, that isn't either immediately accessible because it was streamed live, or almost immediately accessible because it's up on a streaming service within like a week. So there's so many options out there. There's so much choice. So if you don't like something, rather than spending your time and your energy just tearing it down, which so many people do, and I don't understand that at all. Just watch something else. Just watch something you like. I'm sure
That's
there's
all.
something out there
There's
for
so
sure.
many things out there, and so many things to be happy and excited about. The negativity, it's got to stop in many aspects, not just pro wrestling, but that's just one of the things. I know a lot of people say like Twitter trolls and things like that, and we are nowhere near famous enough to have any kind of Twitter trolls, so that's a good thing.
If I don't enjoy like a particular television show, I don't watch it every week and then like write a terrible review of it, or like I don't there's the amount of anxiety and stress that so many people seem to be under as they watch like particular kinds of wrestling they don't like. It's just don't watch it. Watch something else. There's so much other things.
Exactly. There's so many other ways you could spend your time, like doing something you enjoy and just get out there and do it. I know you said you've been, pretty much everywhere. You've wrestled, the who's who in professional wrestling right now. Is there anybody out there that you've had your eye on, maybe, that you haven't had a chance to wrestle yet, and you see them working, you're like, man, I would love to work.
I hate this question because I can never think of one answer, and then I always think of like 20 answers later.
Damn it, I'm sorry.
No, I just like pretty much wherever I go, I see new people, male and female. I'm like, oh, I really want to wrestle them. And sometimes you get the opportunity that time. Sometimes I'll kind of like float the idea for next time. I'm about to go back to the UK for a month in a couple weeks, which I'm really excited about because there's always, opportunities to have brand new matches there. Speedball, Mike Bailey and I are trying to team up as much as possible where we can. And we have a couple tag matches that are booked on that tour. So I'm excited for that. So that's like new opportunities. Like that's new tag wrestling. That's even more people to work with. So I don't know, like I never have like a set list or a set person going. I'm kind of open to anything all the time. I just want to keep having new experiences.
I just want to throw out a dream match then. You and Mike Bailey, Candice and Joey. If I know Candice is in NXT now, but if that's an option,
doesn't become available anytime soon.
I will. You know what? I'll be one of those angry Twitter trolls, and I'll start sending tweets to WWE and say we want Candice out so we could see this match.
Honestly, I would prefer that she never become available for another match on the Indies.
That's true. I don't blame you. She's doing fantastic things over in in NXT. So now, somebody who hasn't seen you wrestle, they've never seen you wrestle before. This is another one of those questions that might be a lot of answers, so I apologize in advance. But if somebody's never seen you wrestle, just 2 or 3 matches that you could say, hey, watch this, this is who I am.
Gosh, so this is a bit older, but I'm always saying, go back to my stuff with Greg Iron and AIW. Of course, it's quite a bit older. I'm a much different performer than I am now, than I was then, than I am now. But a lot of the emotion and the intensity of that is I think really worth taking a look at. I don't know. I don't really discuss my own work ever. I don't know. Like it depends what you're into. I do lots of different kinds of matches and lots of different kinds of styles. So I don't know. I don't really have any recommendations. I know that sounds like a cop out, but I just like I don't know how to, push my own work. But I'm sure like people have opinions of their own or have seen things that they liked or didn't like.
Okay, that's fair. Let me ask you, what was one of the most fun matches you've had? How about that?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I had a lot of fun matches. Every time I wrestle for Fest down in Florida, that's always a party. Like we do some wild stuff down there. That is a promotion, by the way, speaking of, places to check out. They put a lot of their content up on YouTube for free, as well as making their full shows available. That's one that I would like everyone to check out. It's Fest Wrestling down in Gainesville. It's just wild. Like it's just kind of a no rules, but sometimes when there are rules, there's wacky rules. We did a hardcore Easter egg hunt a couple weeks ago.
That sounds awesome.
Anything
that sounds so cool.
Anything at Fest is going to be fun. I try to do everything, fun that I can, especially, as time goes on. Fun has kind of become the number one thing for me. There's a promotion in England I've worked for called Attack, where we had a Halloween show last year where everyone dressed up in costumes, like that sort of stuff. To me, these days, it's just preferable to anything else. Like it's just fun. If it's not fun, I don't want to do it.
And that's fair. And I think that's a mantra that, a lot of people can kind of get behind. Do It was December 2016. You posted that you had asked for your release from Ring of Honor. Does that have anything to do with like you looking to travel and get your name out there more? Was that something that kind of built up over time?
Yeah. You know, sometimes you have to figure out like where, like I've talked about fit before, and that's the thing you talk about too with like just any career. Like, do I fit in this office environment? Do I fit, you know, in this clerkship position? Like anything, you have to have a fit, and I felt like the fit was off for me at that time. And you know, they were starting to do some things with women's wrestling. Maybe it wasn't where I wanted it to be, and it's no use for you to just hang around and like be unhappy with something or hang around and complain about it. Like if you have the option, and I had the option, this is what I will stress. Like, as we talk about, like, are you happy in your position? Are you happy in your career? Like, of course, a lot of times, like it's just not an option to change what you're doing, or you have to ride it out for a little longer. And like that, I know how rough that is, because I've been there too. But I had the option to have a little more, I don't want to say freedom, because it's not like that wasn't an issue at all. Just have a little more flexibility with what I was doing, and just sort of have to like be out there on my own and find myself, like a sink or swim sort of situation. So that's what I did. And sometimes it comes down to just figuring out where you need to be. And if you are in a position where things are kind of like laid out for you, stuff can start to feel really easy and not challenging and not fun. And I didn't want to be in a position where that was how I felt about wrestling, because if this is a job, then it's a really dangerous job, and I would like it to at least be a fun one.
Yeah, and like you said, since then, I mean, you've been to Germany, Japan, Canada, Florida, and so it seems like you've definitely made the right decisions. I know you are a cross-world traveler; you're all over the place. Where can people follow? Where you're going to be? Who you're going to be wrestling? Things like that. Where can we find you on social media?
So mostly I'm on my Twitter, which is at It's Veda Time. That's where I pretty much keep up and interact the most. I have an Instagram as well, but it's mostly just photos that I also put on Twitter. So I would advise people to go to my Twitter, because that's definitely where I'm the most interactive, and the one that I remember I have the most.
It's Veda Time is the best Twitter handle ever, by the way. So make sure everybody goes follow Veda Scott at It's Veda Time. Also, prowrestlingtees.com/Veda Scott. There are some awesome shirts up there, a lot of cat inspired shirts, and
Yes.
as an animal lover, I'm totally all behind that. So make sure you check out all of her stuff. Veda, we can't thank you enough for hopping on with us, bearing through all the technical difficulties. We're looking forward to what you have coming up, and everybody out there, again, if you're listening, at It's Veda Time on Twitter, go follow her and go support the Pro Wrestling Tees. There's some awesome shirts on there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Veda. Have a good night.